Good afternoon, everybody. So we're going to talk about a couple features that we have that were in field to finish. So hopefully we have people who are field to finish users. I'm a huge fan of that program. I think it's one of the greatest money makers for surveyors that do lots of existing conditions plans that we have. Uh, so I'm going to try to step through this methodically, and I just have a blank drawing here and an empty coordinate file, and I'm going to start. So I'm going to start with trees, and then we'll move to pipes, and then we'll see what else we have time for based upon any questions that we have. So I'm just going to simply pick a point here, and zero elevation is fine, and I'm going to call it a deciduous tree, and I'll just call it D tree. And there's my point. So no great secrets here. So to draw this tree, I'm now going to go into field to finish, and I have an empty code table, and I'm going to create a code called D tree. And oh boy, DCID. I think I spelled that right. Not going to worry about a description. I'm going to put it on a layer called trees. Actually, I might have one in here, trees. And I'm going to pick a symbol for it. And we have this lovely category of trees, and there's all kinds of cool looking ones like this star thing, and I'm just going to pick this guy right here. And then you have a scale size, symbol size scalar right here of 0.1. The way the symbol size scalar works, it's 0.1 times whatever the drawing setup is under drawing settings, and it makes the symbol that size. Quick hint, all your trees will be way too small if you use a symbol size scalar of 0.1. I'll just show you that, and I'll hit OK and draw, and there's my tree on a layer called tree. So not a big deal there. So what some people have done, and even one of the sample FLD files that we include, is they end up doing this for every tree size, so that you could have a deciduous tree and maybe call it D10, or start with, whatever, 2-inch, 4-inch, and then you end up with a gazillion codes for the different types of trees you have, and maybe you can simplify it to deciduous tree and coniferous tree, and that's what I see a lot of people do, but then they have a separate code for every size. So to use the tree setup, which is what this webinar is about, number one, the change you make is the feature type. So you set it up very similar to what you already have here. You pick a symbol and a code. But instead of a feature type, which is topo, and probably 98% of everything you do is a topo point, we have 4 choices now. There's a tree, a pipe, and a utility. So what you'd pick, obviously, is tree. So that changes the way this thing behaves. So once you set that feature type on tree, instead of just drawing this at the scale of the symbol size scalar, it and just simply placing it on that layer, and that's the end of it, the tree setup allows you to do all kinds of other things with the tree. So we're going to start at the top and work down. So the first option here is draw point attribute block. Well, that's the point here, which is right now is just displaying the point number 7. Hey, I wonder why it didn't start at 1. Oh, probably because I've played with this before. So that's going to draw the point block, the Carlson point block, which has the point number, the elevation, and description. That's right now that's just drawing it based upon whatever my point default setting is set to. So if you turn that off, you're going to get the tree symbol, but you're not going to have a point. So I particularly like having my points in the drawing so I can see the point number. Especially if there's a problem with one of them, I know exactly what point it is without doing any extra work. And then we're going to come back to tree table. We're going to come back to diameter and radius. But essentially what these do is allow you to enter in as part of your code the diameter of the trunk, the caliper size, and the drip as usually in the form of radius. If you look at your input value, that's what controls this. The input trunk value is defaulted to be a diameter and the drip value as a radius. So all we did so far was enter that in as D tree. So these things aren't really actually going to do much. And by the way, the codes to skip tree line, I'm going to confess to everybody, I'm not really sure of a good way to use that, but there are codes that you would be in your code table that you want to make sure are not included as part of your tree line. The only way that would happen is that I can think of is if they were also set with companion codes. So somebody must have needed this somewhere along the way, but I don't see yet anyways a real value in using that if your code table is set up correctly anyways. And but I say that with a caveat that someone at some point will show me how they're using this and might be a real good option, but I'm not even going to talk anymore about that one. So then we have symbol options. This one, the first one, draw tree symbol for drip radius and scale. So that what that's going to do is it's going to scale the drip radius based upon the value that was entered. I'm going to go ahead and click on that and put that setting first. And then I'm going to edit the point. So we had D tree only. So what you can then do is you can enter in a additional numeric values for the trunk size and the drip line and actually the height of the tree as well. So I'm going to say it is a 10-inch tree, and it has, so if you shot that, you measured the caliper and then you paced out or took a measuring tape and said that you had a drip line radius of, that's also 10, let's say, 10-foot radius. So this is assumed to be in inches, defaults to be in inches, and this is in feet. So I'm going to save that point. And just to show you where that is again, the input values are trunk values is diameter and radius. And I'm trying to see where that default is, that's in inches and feet, but that's the default. You can change that somewhere. And then there's a layer control, which is it's going to take the layer name and then you can do prefix or suffix. So if I label this tree, it's going to be a -txt. So if you remember, I called this tree, the layer for the tree to go on is tree, so it's going to make a layer called tree-txt. The description codes, now this is the way you can control the order that I just put that in. So this is the default order. The trunk first and the drip second. And then if you add a tree tag manually, you can do that, and then a height. So you can change these orders. So when I put 10 space 10, it's going, the first 10 is the trunk, the second one is the drip line. And you can add a suffix, because if you do that, then you're going to code it that way. There's an option for GIS attributes that actually is the same idea as here, but it's a different way of collecting it in the field. So don't be confused about this. And in actuality, using attributes, it could be an easier way to locate trees. If you do a lot of tree surveys, it's not a bad option, where I'm not going to cover that. It's a little bit longer of a lesson to set up GIS attributes, but it's very useful because you can set up an attribute, a feature and attribute file, and upload that into ServCE, and actually have it stop and ask the crew, when they locate every tree, these values, so they don't forget to measure the trunk or drip line if you need those, or height if you need those. So, but all that is that's what the default values for those attributes would be. It works essentially exactly the same as this, though, except this requires that you enter all the additional information as part of your code, separated by spaces. Again, this one was dtree space 10 space 10. So that's dtree is the symbol, the code, and then it's a 10-inch diameter and 10-foot radius drip line. Then you set up your layers, your label layers, and you can put different text sizes and what have you, and location for the label, and then dig in further with the label settings. And right now I have, and this is the default, is just I'm going to label the trunk size and a comment. The comment would be any additional information I put in for the tree, like the species or condition of the tree or whatever you might want to add or might have to add. These column widths, that has to do directly with the table. If you're making a table, we'll come back to that. So right now, that's all we're going to get. So I hit OK, and I'm going to exit this, save that definition file, and draw that. So now I get a scaled tree. The symbol itself is a 10-foot radius. 10-inch tree gives it a 10-foot radius in the drip line, and it labels it on a layer called trees-text, and that's on your tree layer. So that's the attribute block. I don't have an elevation, so it's not showing anything there. So just to demonstrate this further, let's draw another tree here. It's a D tree. Let's code it the way you would in the field. Let's say this is a 20-inch trunk size, and it's got a 24-foot drip line. And let's do one more here, and let's do a big tree. We'll get it like a 38-inch tree, and it's got a 40-foot drip line. So this one's going to be big. So when I process this, hit all, I get that. Now that starts to become a problem because it scales every symbol size of the tree. So now you start to get a messy looking plan. That might be what you have to do if you have to individually show tree sizes, but we've got some options for this. So we're going to take a look at those. So now we can kind of go back into the tree setup and look at some of these other options. So option number 2 is draw a tree symbol for drip radius by a factor. So if I turn that on, I now have a size factor so I've got the drip radius entered in to each one of these codes, but then I can apply a size factor to it. So it doesn't draw it as a true drip line, but it would be symbolic of, the 10-inch will still be smaller than the 38-inch. So this is set to 0.5. It can be anything you want it to be, and I'll hit OK. and draw that. And so you see that the drip line, the tree symbols all got smaller. It still labels it 38 inch, but it just draws a smaller drip line. So that just sort of kind of helps clean up your plan. Again, you could make everything the same size. This option here draws the tree symbol with the code symbol size. Well, that's going to draw it exactly the way I had it before, which is a 0.1. So whatever the tree symbol size is in the code, it's going to use that instead of doing all of this. So that doesn't really get you as far as, you know, I think you'd want to deal with. You really don't need to use the tree feature if you're just going to do that. If you're just drawing every single tree exactly the same size with the same symbol, then you really don't need the tree feature. It's really designed to do more than that. One of the things that I actually do with my normal setup, I take advantage of this, and that is just draw the tree symbol by the factor of the trunk diameter. So it's just going to use the value of the trunk. So now I only have to enter in the first value, which is the trunk size. So then I can apply a size factor to that. So let's say I can make that as a 1 to start with and draw these guys. So that's pretty much what you were just looking at. So it's a factor of the trunk size. Remember, the trunk is written in a diameter. So you're already going to get a diameter that's like half, so 19 feet instead of 38 feet. So even at a 1, then you have that applied. I actually take advantage of this because in most of the surveys that I do, this is ample for everything. I particularly want to see a symbol that is graphically bigger for a 38-inch tree than a 10-inch tree. So just by looking at the plan, you can really see the difference. But what this requires is I don't actually need that second drip line because it's not using it. So this would just be coded D-tree 38, and that's it. Now, what I have found, more and more tree surveys are becoming more and more a normal part of surveying. We have, at least, where I'm working, more and more, I said that a lot, don't I? Towns are they're setting up bylaws for tree surveys. It's usually in protection zones like wetland buffer zones and resource areas. So along riverbanks and stuff like that, where people have cleared all the way to the riverbank and they don't want them to do that anymore. Or if they do, then they require tree replacements and things like that. So picking up actual caliper on trees is becoming starting to look like more the norm. So I might not be able to get away with that in every town even. So let's go back here. And then the last option here, well, not the last option, the second to last option is everything is the same size. So it's going to use whatever that value is, multiply that times the scale factor of the drawing, and every tree will be the same size based on that scale factor. So again, if you want to make your trees graphically symbolic of being larger or smaller, but you find that what I just did is too big, the plan is still too messy, you can just simply put in a different scale factor here like that, and you get a cleaner looking plan. Now, a really cool option though, in a case like this where you have lots of trees crowded in there and they're kind of overlapping each other, and it is also a requirement by some of the, I think Mass DOT at least requires that you actually draw the trunk at the actual size, no scale factors. So I'm going to take a look at that. and I'm just going to draw a circle. So it's going to look at that first value and draw a circle. And then when I look at the layers, I can set a different layer. I'm going to say dash trunk. And while I'm at it, I'm going to say dash drip. So what it's going to do is it's going to draw a circle now on the trunk layer of tree dash trunk. And when I get back to the drip line, I'm going to just do the trunk first and hit OK. So now I get, oh, there was an option in there that I want to turn off, and that is group with symbol. I'm going to turn that off because I want them separate from each other. So I get a circle here, drawing at 30-inch or a 38-inch diameter circle. And so here's the 10-inch and the 20-inch. All right. Let's add to that drip line. And what I'm going to do, as far as the symbol options off, I really don't need that symbol on there, so I'm going to change that to none. And now I'm going to draw the drip line in scale, and I'm going to use these little bubbles. So remember, in the scale of the drip lines, they overlap each other. So this is really a nice option that when I draw these, I get this. So the points are on the a different layer than the trunk and the drip line and the description, so I can freeze my points and I have that. So as you populate this, what it does is it connects the outside drift lines, and where they all overlap, it makes a single polyline. So now you have a plan that shows the outermost drip line instead of all these overlapping lines and simple trunks. So on busy sites, so myself, I have two things set up. I have, because you save these, obviously, the tree setup, you hit save and load. And then I actually have one called simple. Well, actually I have a 3. Here's one with the drip line, here's one, the simple, and here's one for just trunks. Again, the Mass DOT requires that you just show the trunks. They don't want the drip line. So you can set these up any way you want. Now let's add to that a tree table. So if you draw a tree table, and I like to use an actual table entity, if you're familiar with using tables in CAD, they're very handy. These values I don't have to change except right here. So the tree ID, so if you're going to use a table, the kind of the easiest way to do it is to just tag the tree with an ID, and I like to use the point ID. So it's going to have the same number as the point. So you could tag it with your own number. So it would start consecutively from 100 or whatever you type in there, and you can use alpha codes as well. But I like to just use the point ID because then I know what point the tree was shot from. And with point protection, I know that I won't accidentally have 2 points with the same ID. So I think that's a real nice option there. So I draw a tree table entity, and tree ID is going to be the point ID, and then I go over to the label section. So now that I'm going to add more information to this, I think what I'm going to do is add more options of what I want to have is shown up in my tree table. So for instance, the drip size. Actually, what I want to do is tag the tree ID. I'm going to put that as number 1 with a prefix of T. and then followed by the trunk size, and then the drip size, and the last is a comment, which we haven't put any of those in. So your other options are the height and the elevation and the code description itself. The drip size is in feet, so I'm going to put a little foot mark there. And this option here is only labeled tag ID with a table, so which means I'm going to be prompted whether or not I really want to draw a table every time, but I have that on. And I exit, and I'm going to hit OK. And it says, do you want to create the table? And I'm going to say, yes, I do. And then I pick a location for the table. And then there's all these things that you can change as far as the table creation itself. Just accept the defaults, and then here I have it. So 7, 8, 9, it's the 10-inch, 10-foot, my trunk size and drip line. So there's no comments on there. So the comments are added like you would with any other field code. With us by default is with a slash. So anything that comes after a slash, if you're used to field to finish, you add a slash, a forward or a backward slash, whether depending on whether you want a prefix or a suffix. But that in for the tree table is considered the comment. So in other words, if this was a maple tree, and let's just say this guy is a elm tree, this guy is a big old oak tree. When I press this field to finish now, yes to the tree table. And so now I get this, and I have a cleaner looking plan instead of having anything to do with the size. It's just got the tree tag number. And again, I can freeze the points themselves, and this is my plan.